I feel nauseous, believe me.
The relationship between the United States and China stands as one of the most critical and complex bilateral dynamics in the 21st century. These two global powers, with their vast economies and significant international influence, shape not only their own destinies but also the broader trajectory of global politics, trade, and technological advancement. Their interactions, whether cooperative or confrontational, send ripples across the world, affecting nations large and small. Understanding this evolving relationship is therefore paramount for grasping the current state of global affairs. The intricate dance between Washington and Beijing involves a delicate balance of economic interdependence, strategic competition, and differing ideological viewpoints, creating a constantly shifting landscape. Historically, U.S.-China relations have oscillated between periods of engagement and episodes of tension. The journey from diplomatic normalization in the late 1970s to China's integration into the global economy marked decades of increasing interconnectedness. However, this era of engagement has gradually given way to a more competitive phase. Concerns in the U.S. regarding trade imbalances, intellectual property theft, and China's rising military assertiveness have grown more pronounced. Similarly, China has sought to carve out a more prominent role on the world stage, sometimes challenging the existing international order, which it perceives as overly influenced by Western powers. This shift has set the stage for the current, more contentious period. The inauguration of Donald Trump as the 47th U.S. president on January 20, 2025, signaled a significant recalibration of American foreign policy, particularly towards China. His administration quickly prioritized a review of existing trade relationships. A key focus became China's adherence to previous commitments, such as the 2020 trade agreement, which stipulated a substantial increase in Chinese purchases of American goods. This America First approach, emphasizing transactional diplomacy, promised a more assertive and often unpredictable stance in negotiations, directly impacting the tone and substance of bilateral talks. Early actions in 2025, such as threats of new tariffs, underscored this new, more confrontational posture from Washington. The complexities of the current U.S.-China relationship extend far beyond mere economic indicators. They encompass a burgeoning technology rivalry, with both nations vying for dominance in next-generation innovations like artificial intelligence and semiconductors. Furthermore, strategic decoupling in sensitive sectors has become a stated policy goal for the U.S., aiming to reduce reliance on Chinese supply chains for national security reasons. Geopolitical flashpoints from the South China Sea to Taiwan add another layer of intricacy. Navigating this multifaceted relationship requires careful diplomacy and a clear understanding of the underlying interests and anxieties driving both Washington and Beijing in this pivotal year of 2025. The early months of 2025 witnessed a dramatic escalation in trade friction between the U.S. and China. Following President Trump's inauguration, a more transactional and aggressive trade policy quickly took shape. On February 1, 2025, a 10% tariff on a wide range of Chinese imports was imposed, citing concerns over fentanyl production and broader trade imbalances. This was followed by further measures, including a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum imports globally on February 10, which naturally impacted China. By March 3, President Trump announced an increase in tariffs on many Chinese goods to 20%, effective March 4. China, in turn, responded with retaliatory duties, particularly targeting U.S. agricultural products, signaling its unwillingness to passively accept American trade pressure. April 2025 marked a period of particularly rapid tariff escalation, pushing bilateral trade relations to a precarious point. President Trump imposed sweeping tariffs on April 2, raising Chinese import duties to 54% and reinstating the end to the de minimis exemption for small parcels from China. China retaliated on April 4 with a 34% duty on all U.S. goods. The situation intensified sharply around April 9, when the U.S. raised tariffs on Chinese goods to a staggering 104%, then to 125%, and ultimately clarified the rate as 145%. China matched with its own tariff hikes, reaching 125% on U.S. goods, before declaring it would no longer mirror every U.S. increase, opting instead for policy support to mitigate domestic impacts. Despite the fierce tariff battles of early 2025, May brought tentative signs of renewed dialogue and potential de-escalation. A significant diplomatic breakthrough occurred on May 7, 2025, when Chinese and U.S. officials convened in Geneva to discuss the pressing trade issues. This meeting, involving newly appointed negotiators Vice Premier Haley Feng for China and Secretary Basant for the U.S., reportedly improved communication channels. Furthermore, on May 12, 2025, an agreement was announced to reduce reciprocal tariffs to 10% for a 90-day period on certain goods. However, broader punitive tariffs largely remained, with figures from May 23, 2025, indicating general U.S. tariffs on Chinese exports stood at 40%, and Chinese tariffs on U.S. exports at 30%. The path forward in U.S.-China trade negotiations remains fraught with uncertainty, with several critical dates looming. A decision on reciprocal tariffs affecting 90 countries is anticipated by July 9, 2025, which could indirectly influence the U.S.-China dynamic. More directly, August 2, 2025, has been identified as a crucial decision point for the broader U.S.-China trade agreement. The current high tariff rates could potentially be reduced if China addresses specific U.S. concerns, such as stemming the flow of fentanyl precursors. The new negotiating structure under Vice Premier Feng and Secretary Basant offers a glimmer of hope for more structured and perhaps productive discussions, though deep-seated differences persist. The tensions between the United States and China now extend far beyond traditional trade disputes, encompassing a fierce competition for technological supremacy and a deliberate U.S. policy of strategic decoupling. The American government has articulated a clear focus on reducing its dependency on China in areas deemed critical to national security. This includes vital sectors such as semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, and critical minerals. While the aim is not a complete economic separation, the goal is to onshore or friendshore supply chains for these sensitive goods. This strategic shift reflects a growing concern in Washington about vulnerabilities exposed by over-reliance on a geopolitical competitor for essential products and technologies. The rivalry in technology is particularly acute. The U.S. has implemented various measures to counter China's tech ambitions, including export controls on advanced semiconductor technology and equipment. Policies such as the proposed ban on Chinese connected vehicles and restrictions on Chinese server companies illustrate this trend. The future of the popular social media app TikTok, owned by Chinese company ByteDance, also remains a point of contention, with President Trump signing an executive order on April 4, 2025, to delay a potential ban for 75 days to allow more time for a sale. Conversely, China's Made in China 2025 initiative, despite some inefficiencies, has largely succeeded in fostering domestic innovation and reducing reliance on foreign technology in key areas, creating globally competitive Chinese companies. Beyond broad strategic decoupling and the tech race, specific actions highlight the widening scope of U.S.-China friction. Investment flows have come under increased scrutiny, with President Trump signing a memorandum on February 21, 2025, to restrict Chinese investment in the U.S. on national security grounds. The U.S. Commerce Department has also been active, adding over 50 Chinese entities to its entity list in March 2025, restricting their access to American technology. Even academic and research collaborations have been affected, exemplified by the controversial, though likely legally challenged, Trump administration move to ban foreign enrollment at Harvard University if alleged links to the Chinese Communist Party were substantiated, a development seen by many as an unnecessary sideshow. The geopolitical undercurrents further complicate the relationship. The United States continues to affirm its commitment to allies in the Indo-Pacific region, such as Japan and Taiwan, which China views with suspicion. An enhanced U.S. military presence in the region is perceived by Beijing as an attempt to contain its rising influence. In response, China has been strengthening its ties with nations in the global south, seeking to build alternative partnerships and project its own vision of global governance. These geostrategic maneuvers create a complex backdrop against which trade and technology disputes unfold, making comprehensive resolutions even more challenging to achieve. The differing approaches to negotiation often present an initial hurdle in U.S.-China talks. Reports suggest that Beijing typically prefers meticulously organized discussions with clearly defined protocols and pre-agreed frameworks before high-level meetings commence. This contrasts with President Trump's more transactional and often improvisational style, where he personally favors direct engagement aimed at striking deals. President Xi Jinping's significant personal influence over China's negotiating stance also means that the dynamics can be heavily shaped by his directives and perceptions of the evolving bilateral relationship. These contrasting styles necessitate a degree of flexibility and understanding from both sides if progress is to be made. Despite deep ideological rifts and escalating strategic competition, leaders in both Washington and Beijing appear to recognize the profound importance of finding some modus vivendi, particularly on the economic front. A full-blown, uncontrolled trade war benefits neither nation in the long run. However, skepticism abounds regarding the feasibility of a grand bargain that resolves all outstanding issues, especially concerning technology. Many analysts suggest that focusing on more narrowly defined economic issues and implementing confidence-building measures might offer a more realistic path forward, rather than attempting to solve intractable ideological and security dilemmas through trade talks alone. From Beijing's perspective, the current situation is viewed with a mix of frustration and confidence. Chinese officials have reportedly expressed exasperation at what they perceive as a lack of consistent engagement from the US at times. Yet China also believes it has significantly reduced its vulnerability to Western economic coercion over recent years and has gained substantial experience in managing trade tensions. Consequently, while a stable trade deal with the US might be considered nice to have, it is not seen as essential for China's continued economic development. The nation's formidable industrial strength, advanced infrastructure, and focus on technological self-sufficiency contribute to this sense of resilience. Ultimately, the trajectory of US-China relations in the coming months and years hinges on a multitude of factors. The new negotiating structure, led by Vice Premier Haley Feng and Secretary Bassan, offers a potential avenue for more stable and predictable dialogue, which businesses on both sides desperately crave for investment planning. However, the powerful undercurrents of strategic rivalry in technology and geopolitics will continue to exert considerable pressure. The critical decisions expected in July and August 2025 regarding tariffs and trade agreements will provide a clearer indication of whether the two giants can navigate towards a semblance of coexistence, or if further conflict and economic fragmentation are inevitable in this new era.